Okay, if you guys can hear me, can you just say so? Where is it?
Yes, we
Can
can.
you hear us,
we can hear you.
Jamal?
Okay. I'm sorry, there was no internet. I don't know if you guys know or no. It just came. And the whole building, the whole university actually in Warren Ponds, the internet was down. So I tried to go to the library and other place as well. So it just came back here to my office. I'm now in my office. I think I have set up, I hope everything. I can only see, I don't know. I don't see anybody here, but I can see something here.
There are 46 of us here, so it's
Yeah, so
quite a few of us.
I know I can see, I don't see faces, I see the...
I think that's just because no one has their camera on.
Oh, that's fine. But you can see my slide, right?
Yes, now we can see you as well.
Them. Yeah.
Okay, you can see me as well. Okay. Again, there was no internet, that's why I was late. Let me set up everything here. Welcome everyone again. This week we'll be talking about the cybersecurity policy. We will be actually covering the fundamentals of cybersecurity policy because this is introductory subject. Okay. Now, in this class, we'll be covering, again, as I said, cybersecurity standards, procedures, and guidelines, which are topics of chapter 4 in your reference book. We'll be considering a number of questions. What is the cybersecurity policy and what are the different types of cybersecurity policies? We'll be looking at what key roles a good cybersecurity policy plays, particularly in developing and implementing successful cybersecurity programs. How does a business without cybersecurity policy could be leaving themselves open to data breach, cyber attacks, and so forth. So in other words, cybersecurity is part of administrative controls or measures, and they need to have, almost every organization need to have in one form or another cybersecurity policy. What are the processes of assessing and updating cybersecurity policies, developing and implementing and maintaining new cybersecurity policies? So these are the kind of questions we will try to answer in this session today. Now, we may really say, why do we study, or why cybersecurity really needs a policy? Employees, every business that has employees and use emerging technologies or technologies and collect data and so forth, and has a number of employees. There are a lot of issues, challenges, such as negligence from employees, contractors, and so forth. There are also errors, which are very serious problems causing a lot of data breaches. Some due to negligence, some due to errors, some also maliciously. So policy has to be there in order to ensure that you minimize such negligence, error, or malicious activities by employees, current or former, or by contractors as well. Now, more than 1/3 of organizations all over the world fall victim to insider threats, particularly from employees. And if there is no cybersecurity policy in place, you can't actually uh, accuse them for anything unless you have cybersecurity policies in place and you have actually given them and trained them. So it is very important to have cybersecurity policy in place. Uh, to inform employees of what is and is not acceptable behavior in the organization, you have to have cybersecurity policy. Now, so policy development is meant really to improve employee productivity as well, not only to prevent them from doing their job, but to improve productivity. So when we develop cybersecurity policy, we really need to balance both productivity and also usability so that we will ensure that cybersecurity policy is in place, not as a deterrent to do your job, but actually to make you do your job in secure and efficient manner. So we say most employees are inherently wanted to do what is best for their job, and they do really right. But there are some who are just negligent or sometimes need some training or education in order to do their job in an acceptable and secure manner. Policy also can help organizations avoid litigations, because if you don't have policy in place and something happen, or your employee actually use your own resources from your own location, attack some other organizations, you need to be liable for that. In order to avoid that, you have to have cybersecurity policy in place. Anyway, a quality cybersecurity program always is, the center of any quality cybersecurity program is cybersecurity policy. It is very essential foundation control or measure that you will have in cybersecurity program. And in fact, your textbook says the success of any information security program or security protection depends on cybersecurity policy. This is actually true as when we, I don't know if I have it in this lecture or no. Most of you probably know about firewalls. Firewalls actually uses rules. Those rules are policies, cybersecurity policies that are actually implemented in firewalls. Almost all, most of this technology you use as a defense mechanism, they have actually to translate enterprise policy into applications or practical aspect of it. So implementation is what you see, but the policy has to be developed. If you take the firewall again, what to let in, what to prevent from going out, and so forth, these are the policies that the enterprise develops, and then the technologists implement it. So the success of any cybersecurity program is really depends on how good your cybersecurity policy is, if you have one in place or no. Another reason that we really need to do cybersecurity policy, or a business has to have cybersecurity policy, is because of the continuously growing data breach. It is going on, and it's growing and the cost to recover from it is humongous in the 4.4 millions in the latest IBM report. So you can see that there are many, many reasons why actually you need to know why cybersecurity policy is important. In fact, any one of you, if you end up becoming a cybersecurity professional that deals with cybersecurity management, you will be doing this cybersecurity policy development or actually modifying the existing one continuously. It is a policy that actually keep developing all the time. So in previous slide, I talked about really the general aspect of why we need cybersecurity policy in place. In fact, there are many industry standards such as PCI DSS, which is Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. PCI DSS is well known in the payment cards, Visa, MasterCard, and so forth. They have industry, level standards and procedures and guidelines that every business has to use. In that particular standard, they have specifically mandate policies for information security for employees and contractors. So they do have actually for making sure that the employees are aware of the policies, how to deal with the data, how to manage the information they, in their exposed to them, and so forth. And they must actually have this cybersecurity policy. And there are many privacy and cybersecurity laws and regulations as well that mandate businesses to have cybersecurity policy. This includes the GDPR that we have talked about, and the GDPR, for example, it mandates organizations to implement data protection policies. I'll be talking about these data protection and privacy policies shortly. The Australian Privacy Act 1988 does also have this mandate. So almost every laws that you have, both industry-specific policies, laws and regulations do mandate cybersecurity policy. So it is both general and regulatory and law mandated requirements that you will see in any business to have cybersecurity policies. Okay, what is cybersecurity policy anyway? It has a number of attributes. It is a class of administrative cybersecurity control. It is a control, actually. It is a deterrent control, and it is actually a proactive measures, not reactive. Reactive measures or reactive controls are controls that act after the incident happened, after cybersecurity breaches happen. But cybersecurity policy and also the planning are proactive controls. You do them before the incident happens. Cybersecurity policy outlines proactive measures to make sure or to prevent, to also respond to threats, and overall reducing the cost of any incidents or cybersecurity threats to a business. It is a formal directives. It's from the upper level managers. The upper level managers actually basically say, we want this to be observed in the business. It is most of the time written from top level in a very short form, just like a dot. Points, 4 or 5 of them like that, and then expanded on later on. But it is actually a formal directives. It establishes guideline for the protection of the organization's asset. It mandates compliance with legal and regulatory requirements and the maintenance of secure operating environment. So this is why you really need to develop cybersecurity policy. It has to make sure that any cybersecurity policy you pick up from online, for example, you need to look at it if it is formal directives. Does it establish guidelines for the protection of organizational assets? In other words, how to use, what to do and what not to do. It ensures compliance with the legal and regulatory requirements. Most of particularly those businesses that have requirements like health related organizations need to follow certain regulatory requirements. Does your policy actually include those? If your business or the business you're working for falls within these regulatory requirements. Does the policy has maintenance of a secure operating environment? That do the employees actually obey the cybersecurity policies? And the last thing that you see, why if an employee doesn't really follow these policies, is there any ramifications within this policy? So these are the 6 or 7 points that you really need to look into a cybersecurity policy and say whether it's good or bad, or needs really to be redeveloped. So it is really a written statement, as I said. It originates with the top level managers, but it is refined as you go down within the managerial hierarchy. A lot of decisions are made around the policy, particularly in cybersecurity environment. We always look at the policy, what does the policy says before we actually do anything. And it manages the actions of the employees, as I already said. Now, policy is every organization has a lot of controls. Policy is the least expensive control that you will have in any organizations. The problem is it is very difficult to implement it. It is just like any other controls. It's just like firewalls. But this one, you have to actually, it applies to not only technology of the organization, but also the human aspect of cybersecurity. So in order to implement it, to make the employees follow this policy is not easy. It is very, very difficult. So implementation is difficult, but it is the least expensive cybersecurity control any organizations can have. Now, every organization is different. So every organization needs to really tailor the cybersecurity policy to its culture. Every organization has its own culture and its own way of doing things. It has its own value, and so you can't actually take a policy from online and just use it. You can actually take that, but you need to modify it and tailor it to the organization specific, make it organization specific by really modifying it and incorporating what's missing. And also removing what's not necessary if you actually wanted to use existing one. It needs to be really written clearly and concisely. Very, very important point. You need to actually write policy. Law, you don't really need to understand the way laws are written. Only lawyers need to understand cybersecurity policy. Cybersecurity professionals don't really need to understand, or us regular people don't need to understand laws. But cybersecurity policy, every employee of that organization need to understand. So it has to be written in very simple, clear, and concise language. Another very important requirement of cybersecurity policy is that it should not conflict with, say, for example, labor law of Australia. So if any business if you are developing cybersecurity policy for a business, you need to make sure that it does not actually override or conflict with any existing laws. One of the reasons we actually cover cybersecurity and privacy laws in this class is because most of the things we do in cybersecurity has either mandated by some of these laws, or we need to avoid any overriding or conflicting with them. So you really need to have knowledge about cybersecurity laws and privacy laws. That's the reason we cover in this class. So your cybersecurity policy never conflict with the law of the land. And cybersecurity policy should stand up in the court of law if an employee or if anyone outside the company challenges it. For example, if your organization fall victim of data breach, and the regulators accuse you of not having policy, or your policy is not really strong enough, then you can actually show why your cybersecurity policy is strong. So it needs to stand up in court if challenged, or in front of the regulators. These are the four important aspects of cybersecurity policy. It must be tailored to your organization. In other words, it has to reflect the culture of the business. It has to reflect the objectives and the goals of the business. It has to be written in a simple language that every employee in the organization can understand it. And it has to never conflict with the law of the land, and it should be able to stand if challenged. Okay.
Uh,
Now,
Hey, Jimmy, I had a question regarding this. So
yes.
we know that the law of the land can change with time. So how do we accommodate that in our cybersecurity policy, or what do we do in that case?
Uh, Cybersecurity at the end, in the last lecture, sorry, in the last slide, you will see that cybersecurity policy is not something that you can write and throw it in, sitting dust, collecting dust. Cybersecurity is something that you constantly modify. So I will talk about this, exactly the point you raised. Cybersecurity policy is actually divided into three different policies: the top level policy, the middle level policy, and the bottom level policy. Each one of these have names. Uh, the top level policy, basically, as I said, is written by the board members or executives. This has long term goals, 5 years, and so forth. It is very general, but the bottom one is the one that keep changes regularly, with change in the law, environment, threat landscape, and so forth. So yeah, I'll be talking about this. It does actually give you a chance to modify it. Any other question?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone has any question? Okay. Now, again, every organization that collects data from anybody, particularly in online environment, they have to have privacy policy. If you are developing app for mobile phone or any other things, you really need to have a privacy policy incorporated into your mobile phone apps. If you actually collecting data or writing some information that people can search in your own web page, you are required to have privacy policy in place. Uh, Now, a privacy policy is a legal document or a statement that basically explains how an organization collects, uh, uses, stores, and protects data that they collect from persons or individuals. Uh, it also outlines how the organization practices data privacy and aims to ensure the transparency, trust, and compliance within the privacy laws we discussed in previous lecture. So it is very legal term, legal document. And what you see online, for example, when you try to access news website, you see an information just coming up and say, do you agree that we collect this kind of information? If you say yes, then you are consenting to them collecting your information. If you say no, then you are actually not agreeing with them. They probably will just prevent you from accessing their website. Most of the time, you will see privacy policies in footer of the website because they are actually required by cybersecurity laws to instill this in their program. Some organizations have dedicated privacy policy page where they actually direct you to read if you are interested before you accepting or consenting for them to collect your informations. If you look mobile apps, as I said, app settings or menu, for example, the most of the time they ask you for permission, to use this permission. Do you agree? If you say no, they stop. Otherwise, they have their consent. You consent, and they can actually collect a lot of information from you. E-commerce platforms do that. Social media platforms do that. There are a lot of sign-ups and registration pages which collect these. A lot of marketing campaign also through email. They ask for subscription forms and so forth. All this, you can see that they do actually have cybersecurity policy in place. You really need to understand how they work, what they are, if you are if you wanted to implement or if you wanted to develop these applications, websites, email-based marketing, social media-based marketing, and or third-party service providers, and all these have these privacy policies in place. Now, if you wanted to write or develop and implement privacy policy, there are a number of aspects that you need to make sure you include in the policy itself. The most important one is before you collect any data, you need to get user consent. Every organization has to get that, okay? The second one is about make clear to employee, to the person you are collecting the data from, who you are sharing the data with and how you are sharing the data with it could be within Australia, for example, or outside Australia, and also if they are the same line or you are actually selling the data. Most of the organizations actually sell data that they collect from you. They need to actually tell you all these upfront. This is what cybersecurity laws and regulations demand. You also need to inform in customers or anybody you are collecting data from what type of cybersecurity controls you have in place to ensure that the data that you're collecting are secure. And also you need to have how long this data will be stored on and saved. That what we call retention policy, data retention policy. Now you also ensure that how you process this data. For example, you can't actually process this data to profile someone unless you have a reason to do so. If you are actually collecting customers' data, but you are using them like spying on them and so forth, this is illegal. So the way even though if you can get the consent, you cannot actually just process the data without actually the person knowing about it, that you are actually processing for something else than you really collected the data for. You also have to include the user's right in terms of they can actually change, ask you to change their information, they can correct their information, they can delete their information, and they can also stop you from using or sharing their data anymore. Okay, so every organization, they also need to have how to be contacted if you have any questions. Now, even though most of these businesses have all this on their website, if you actually go and try a couple of them right now, you will probably have a lot of issues. Say, for example, they will give you a link to contact with them. If you click on that link actually doesn't take you anywhere. There are many issues like that, but again, you can actually report this kind of behavior, but people try to take advantage of these kind of things as well. Questions? No? Okay.
Sir, I got a
Now,
couple of questions for the assignment one.
okay.
I can
Assignment
ask
one, no,
later in the meeting.
no, now we are in lecture now. In the middle of the lecture, you're asking assignment question?
Yeah. So I can
Oh,
ask later of the meeting. That's okay.
yeah. Yeah, at this moment, I just want questions from the lecture, okay? I actually gave you this table. You can really see it's written very clearly how cybersecurity policy and privacy policy differ. I gave you about, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points how cybersecurity policy differ from privacy policy. Your textbook, the textbook that I mentioned as a for this SIT284, SIT763, doesn't actually have privacy policy in it, but privacy policy is very important. It focuses on cybersecurity policy. So I gave you the comparison between the two here. Both of them actually high-level written directives, but privacy policy is more, the cybersecurity policy is more clearer than privacy policy. Most of the time, privacy policies are written by lawyers. They tend to be very, very long as well. That's why you actually just, whenever you find this privacy policy, most of the people will say agree with it. There's no way you can read all that unless you wanted to just keep reading, and so it is good to read and to know what is written in there, but again, it's too long. The common approach that people use is just to click agree. And privacy policy is actually legal, mandated, and cybersecurity policy is also legal, but it is more so within the organization itself. Okay, but privacy policy is both inside and out. Both of them actually shape employees' behavior. One is about security practices. The other one is how to handle personal information very well. You can actually read them. The table actually gives you a very good outline of the comparison between the two. Okay, let's look at types of cybersecurity policy. As I said, there are very general cybersecurity policies. This cybersecurity policy that you see here, at least 9 of them are very common among every organizations. And some are not common, okay? Most organizations have these policies: acceptable use policies, password policies, network access policies, email policies, wireless policies, and these are very general cybersecurity policies. Now, acceptable use policy, for example, is what really, this policy really states what you can and you cannot do within the organizations, and everybody has this. This is the most common, actually. It outlines appropriate use of organization, the resources, such as internet, how you use internet within the organization. It defines proper and improper use of company equipments, networks, resources, and restricts non-business related activities like playing games and so forth. Then you have email policy. This also covers proper use of email and email encryption and so forth. You have password policy. This policy deals with requirements such as how to, create strong policy and implement strong policy, and how to manage this policy and so forth. So these are most general policies, and I will be talking about how they are implemented, whether they are actually first level, second level, or third level policies. Okay. Now, as I said, all these policies that you see here, they actually fall into one of these 3 policies. Okay, so there are enterprise level policies. These are actually what management must define. And every organization has 3 types of cybersecurity policy. An enterprise cybersecurity policy is at the top, and it is actually sets the strategic direction. It sets the scope for the organization. It also sets the tone for all security efforts. Okay, so this at the top level, this is very, very important. It has strategic direction, the scope of the organization, and the tone for all security efforts and practices. So this enterprise level policy must be based on the support of the organization, top level organization managers. it actually aligns with the vision and mission of the organization. The second level, you have what we call issue-specific information, the cybersecurity policy. The enterprise level policy covers everybody, regardless of whether you are IT department, cybersecurity department, human resource department, all is the same. So it covers this cybersecurity policy at the enterprise level. That's why we say enterprise level policy. Everyone is covered by that policy. The issue specific policy are really focused on specific issues. And these policies provide guidance to all members of the organization in terms of how to use, for example, the IT systems, okay? So, for example, if we have malware issues, then we'll come up with malware policy. If we have password issues, we will develop password policy. So there is issue-specific policy. Every issue will have their own policy. There is the example I gave you here is antivirus policy. This is specifically about the antivirus. That's why we call issue-specific policy. Okay. Now, the third one is system-specific policy. Now, system-specific policy is basically a policy about a particular system. Every system, for example, if you look at the firewall policy, that is system-specific policy. If you look at wireless network, that is system-specific policy. Anything that has to do with system, you develop a policy that falls within system-specific policy. So we have three tiers of, tiers of the policy, enterprise level policy. This policy changes rarely, okay? The issue-specific policy changes more frequently, but the most frequent policy changes comes from system-specific policy. System-specific policy, systems change constantly and rapidly, and the threat landscape also changes at that level. So we keep changing system-specific quite often. Issue-specific policies also change frequently because some issues die down, some issues, new issues develop, and so forth. So policies are not actually constant. They change at systems level and at issue level, rarely at the enterprise level because they are written in very general terms. Okay, can you suggest which one is just name one because we don't have time. Just name one that falls within enterprise policy, issue-specific policy, system-specific policy. Anyone? What is acceptable use policy? Which type of policy it is? Is it issue-specific policy, system-specific policy, enterprise policy?
I think it's usually associated with system specific. Acceptable usage policy is, for instance, a company provides a laptop and there's an acceptable usage policy associated with it. My guess is system.
Yeah, it could be actually system specific in that specific instance that you gave. People actually sharing, company giving you laptops for use at work, and then they actually have developed a cybersecurity policy to say, for example, when to use, how to report, and so forth. if something happened to this policy. That could be actually system specific because it is about the laptop, what you can do with it, when to use it, how to use it, and not how to not abuse it, and so forth. Yes. Can anyone pick up issue-specific policy from this list?
So
Anyone?
incident response policy is something which will cater to an individual incident. So I believe those policies can be issue specific policy.
Yes. Incident response plan is part of issue specific because it deals with issue. Anyone else?
I think password policy, because this focusing on the specific issue of password security, outline the rules like complexity and management.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's also issue specific policy. Thanks. Okay.
And I think email policies as well, because
Yeah,
it deals with the
email,
individual.
email is also issue specific. Okay, so here I give you some examples of the cybersecurity policy. As I said, it is really written very simple in point format. In here, I said credentials must not be stored in readable form to prevent unauthorized access and compromise. It is this actually we converted and implemented in systems or in other controls. Okay, so the second example I gave you is that all sensitive data must be encrypted to protect it from unauthorized access and compromise. Now, what do you observe from these two examples? So these two statements actually tell you about what and why, right? Can you see where it says what and why? Now, if I'm just basically saying that these two statements really, if you look at them, they effectively communicate the what and why without actually telling you the how and when, how it is implemented, when it is implemented. But it tells you why we actually need to have and also why and what we need to have and why we need to have. So if you take the first statement, credentials must not be stored in a readable form to prevent unauthorized access and compromise. To prevent unauthorized access and compromise basically says why we actually doing it. And the first part of the statement, credentials must not be stored in readable form, what we need to do. So you can see every policy is written at the policy level, is written to simply say what and why are clearly stated in there. The same for the second part, you can see the what and why are stated there. So now, what is the problem with this? How do we implement them? Okay, so you can't actually give this to employees. You can't just say this is the policy, credentials must not be stored in readable form. You really need to actually implement them. Now, policies, as I said, are high-level statements, but they are not really implemented, okay? The implementation comes with standards, procedures, and guidelines. That is how we implement policies. Policies are a very simple statements a combination of statements. That's why we actually divide policies into three. Otherwise, they will become bulky. So we have for issue specific, we develop issue specific policies and systems the same. Now, you take that policy. So we take these statements, we take these two statements that you see here. A lot of policies are written like that, and then passed on to, say, for example, if you remember, last week we talked about in the governance, cybersecurity governance, the board level and executives come up with the enterprise strategic plan. The same here also, they come up with this policy at the strategic level. These are the way it's written, very simple. Now, the chief information security officers take these statements and then they convert them, they implement them. In order to implement these cybersecurity policies, they actually use standards, guidelines, procedures, okay? Now, the standards is where you fulfill the how and when. So how do we actually achieve that the controls, the credentials are actually protected? When we achieve is also addressed in these standards, procedures, and guidelines. So you see policy in this diagram. Policy is in the middle and is surrounded by standards, guidelines, and procedures. You need to have policy. Policy is always mandatory, okay? And you have also to have the standards, which is mandatory, and procedures, which is also mandatory, but guidelines is not mandatory, it's optional. As I said, the policy always, you need to actually include the why and what you can do, but without actually talking about how and what and when. So you leave that out. Why do you think we leave out the what and how? Anyone?
This is
So
mainly because the technology keeps on like changing and some items which are currently prevalent get obsolete or vulnerable by time.
yeah, that's excellent. Uh, as I said, policies, the upper level policies the developed by the executive managers remain for a long time. So they don't actually change. And if you actually include, saying, for example, if we look at this in this encryption, if this one, all sensitive data must be encrypted using this type of encryption, and so and so. Now, if that type of algorithm, encryption algorithm, is replaced, then we need to rewrite the whole policy all over again. But by making it really very general, here encrypted means you can use any encryption policy, so any encryption algorithm. So when we do risk analysis, we will see how we determine the best encryption tools or encryption product. But for now, you can see that policy just supports that you have to have this data encrypted. But how and why, it doesn't actually say that. You are correct. Okay, so now what is the standard? This is developed immediately following the policy document. Once you have the policy, the first thing you really need to do is the standard. It's mandatory. The standard is more detailed formal statement. So it takes the policy, but it actually writes it in more detail. The detail includes what must be done to implement the policy statement. So it takes this statement, it now adds the what aspect of it. Before we only have why and how and what. And now it actually done. It says what must be done to implement it. For example, in the previous slide that we looked at the policy, all sensitive data must be encrypted. The corresponding standard will say like advanced encryption standard. AES system is the only acceptable encryption system. So it now makes AES as standard. So standard is that the whatever everything that we do within the organization, everybody will do the same. It is a standard for our organization. In this example, uh, everybody in the organization will use the advanced encryption standard to encrypt their data. A standard actually provides the standard way of doing cybersecurity policy within the cybersecurity activities within the organization. So then after the standard is written, now the procedure is developed. Now, this is again expands on the standard that is written before it. Again, procedure is a mandatory document that everyone in the organization should use. As I said, it extends and implements the standard. The standard itself is not implementable. It just sets standards. We need to use this. Everybody must use that. Everybody must use that. Okay. If the organization wants to change the advanced encryption standard, then they don't have to change the enterprise level policy. They will actually change the standard, the encryption standard algorithm. So the standard is the one that changes. Okay. Now for advanced encryption standard, when the procedure implements, it gives detailed information that any member of the cybersecurity team will be able to understand and use it. In fact, how to implement, how to use this encryption algorithm, and how to store the private keys and so forth. And these procedures really written in clear, logical, and legal, and meets legal requirements as well. So because it's mandatory, procedure is mandatory, standard is mandatory, because they are the ones that implement policy. Okay. Guideline is not actually mandatory. It basically recommendations. It gives employees any recommendation they may use. It is some sort of a reference in complying with a policy or standard. It most of the time intends to outline best practices. Any guideline, if you see, for example, guidelines for how to install wireless network at home is a guideline, and this guideline has best practices included in it. As I said, they are not mandatory, but help employees follow the rules while allowing for flexibility and common sense as well. Okay. So example of guidelines around which websites and social media channels are appropriate to access during work hours is a guideline. For as I said, if you want to play games, the guideline will say when and how to play games and within acceptable policy within the perimeter of the organization. So you write cybersecurity policy, it is high level, then you write standards to make sure that the cybersecurity policy statements are translated into sort of standard implementation mechanism. Then you develop procedures, how to actually implement those standards, and then you give guidelines for people to use. Here is an example. Policy is the one we looked at. All sensitive data must be encrypted. The standard, we say we use advanced encryption algorithm. The procedure lists specific implementation details, the key links, the encryption mode that you must use, the key management practices, and so forth. It outlines all this. In the procedure, the guideline provides or comprehensive encryption guidelines, how to encrypt, and so forth. This is how you write a policy and then how you implement the policy. Okay. Now, there are a lot of frameworks that will help you to develop cybersecurity policy. There are also ready-made cybersecurity policy, but as I said, every organization has unique culture, unique different threats pose unique challenge to every organization. So you need to tailor it. If you download cybersecurity policies, you cannot actually implement them as it is. You need to modify them. You need to look at if your organization is actually mandated by some regulations. You need to make sure that policy is in compliance with the regulations and so forth. So these are some of the requirements of the cybersecurity policy. You develop cybersecurity policy using industry accepted practices. So you need to actually ask before you develop a cybersecurity policy, standard procedures and so forth. You need to get approval from the top level management. And then once you also develop these policies, you make sure that every employee has access to that policy and read that policy and understood the policy. It is your responsibility to make sure that everybody has read and understood it and formally either sign it or some sort of documents must be kept to ensure that every employee has read and agreed to the policy. And nowadays, there are a lot of online systems that allows you to do this, but most of the time, still now, after employees is hired, they will be given this policy, and then the employee will sign saying, I understand, I read and fully understand and will comply with this policy and sign the paper agreeing that they actually will abide by this policy. Now, major problem with cybersecurity policy is applying them uniformly and enforce them uniformly. Sometimes you'll see top-level managers will come and ask you for passwords or use your own password, their password, give you their password to you and ask you to do some work for them, which is basically illegal. And the policy in this case is not applied uniformly and enforced. So these are the things that you need to worry about when you develop policies. Now, this is called bullseye diagram. It is a well-rounded cybersecurity program development model. But what this really shows you is without a solid program from start to finish, it's not easy to have a cybersecurity policy program in place. Because if you don't have policies within this, this onion ring, you will miss something in there. Okay, what this says is that policy is at the outer layer of the whole cybersecurity program. It covers everything: application, system, and network. So the first threat, the first component of your organization's system-facing threat is network. Once somebody breaks into network, then goes into system, then goes into applications. So the defensive mechanism starts with the policy here, and policies for each one of these network systems and applications has to be developed to make sure that what you have at the outer layer, which is the first layer, is strong enough to ensure or minimize cybersecurity from the attack. Uh, Application could be packaged or custom applications. This layer is very important because every application that you will see uh, could be used within the organization and could be manipulated, or maybe you can embed malware in the application, and an employee can implement or embed in certain applications malware and or backdoor and leave the organization and get access to all those things. So you need to have policies in order to prevent that. The system layer, this layer is about hardware and things like desktops, servers, and software, and so forth. The network layer is also very important one. Without the network layer, the components of the system layer doesn't actually connect and also exchange information between applications and systems, and between systems and between applications. So the bullseye model helps in structuring a cybersecurity policy basically by ensuring a layered defense. So it basically says we need to defend using cybersecurity policy first. We develop security policy for networks, which then for systems, and then for application. But they are actually interconnected in a manner that that resembles the onion inside the onion's shape. Okay, we use this cycle to develop cybersecurity policy. We start with planning. So this planning is very important, and it is used mostly for executive buy-in, stakeholders, industry acceptable practices, and so forth. We put them in here. Once we do the planning, then we go into requirement analysis. Why do we need this policy? What are we protecting? What are internal and external issues, environments, and practices that we really need to look into? Do we have cybersecurity policy already in place? How do we modify it? What kind of legal issues that we face? That's what the requirement analysis you do. Then you go into designing, or if you already have one, you redesign it. And then you test it. Testing is very, very important. There are a number of ways you can do testing. Sometimes you can do table testing. Sometimes you can do, select on selected employees. Then once you test, you go back to the executives and you get approval from them. Once you get the approval, now you distribute them either through emails or through messages, or put them in a central location and alert employees to read them, and if they have any updates, you take from them, you update, and then you go the cycle like this. Okay, these are the basic structures of any cybersecurity policy. It has the purpose, the scope of the policy, the definition, policy clause, who is actually do what, and who is responsible for what. If this policy is not actually abide by, if somebody breach the policy, what is the enforcement? This what will be the consequences, control and maintenance. You need to maintain these policies, update them, and also supporting documents, which are standards, procedures, and guidelines are these supporting documents. Now, the structure of cybersecurity policy, as I said, there are two main types of structures. One is a single, very big cybersecurity policy, or you break them into several cybersecurity policies. The second one is the most common way of structuring cybersecurity policies. Now, cybersecurity policies are actually developed in order to also deal with unethical and illegal behaviors. You can see that unethical and illegal behaviors are sources of ignorance, accident, and intent. So these actually fall into illegal. If it's intent, ignorance, and accidents are also part of unethical. And so you need to actually develop a policy to deal with this. Policies are actually deterrents in a sense, because they want to deter ignorance, accidents, errors, and intent. Now, deterrence is mostly about fear. If I break this policy, if I do this, what will happen to me? So it creates fear, apprehension, and also penalty. So it's like law. I will lose my job. I could be prosecuted if I do something wrong, and so forth. So there are enforcements. There are a number of different enforcements. There's punishment. There is censuring, dismissal, and shamed. I don't like the shamed ones, but in UK they started practicing shaming employees who fell victim to phishing attacks and so forth. Now, every staff need to be trained on updated cybersecurity policy or new cybersecurity policy. You really need to prepare training program for them, and you have to train them. And employees must read and understood every cybersecurity policy you have developed in place and formally agreed to it, to really abide by them. So you can't actually accuse anyone who is not formally agreed, formally trained, and formally read the paper, the documents, and agreed and signed it. Having the policy does not necessarily mean you can enforce it. The rule is that you need to educate them. You need to make sure that they read, understood, and then formally agreed. Okay. This is an example quite often used by cybersecurity, by organizations, to ensure that the employee actually have read the policy. Okay. Now, maintenance is another aspect of the policy. Policy is not actually done, written, and dusted. No, it is a continuous process. You really need to review policies with respect of legal changes, with respect of threat, landscape changes, and so forth. Then you need to either develop new policies, or you need to amend existing policies based on that. So reviewing regularly policies is very important to ensure that the policy is aligned with the current level of threats and the current legal and regulatory requirements. So by reviewing, you need to make sure it is updated. So the policy is always a live document, a living document that is constantly reflects the current and possibly future state of the legal and trade landscapes. So you need actually have to have someone to deal with cybersecurity policies all the time. This is a very big one because it deals with many aspects of the organization's cybersecurity. It looks after the network level, the system level, the application level. All these have different types of policies. Yeah, there are always someone who is managing, administering, and changing this, updating cybersecurity policy. These responsibilities sometimes in small organizations are not there, but most of medium to large organizations have someone dealing or managing cybersecurity policy. So I try to cover as much as possible as fast as I could today because we had this network issue. Cybersecurity policies is very important. A quality cybersecurity program always starts and ends with having a very good policy. Policy drives the performance of employees in ways that enhance cybersecurity of an organization. Developing and having proper guidelines and policies that is useful and encourage employees to become more productive is very important. You don't think the policy only, when you develop policy, you don't only think cybersecurity aspect of it, but making sure that you balance it with the productivity aspect of it, that employees can still use the policy and can still do better than what they do without policies. Policy must actually act deterrent and it also comply with the legal issues. And the policies, we said, is an important aspect, an important control, most often the cheapest one, but very difficult to implement it. I put a number of questions for you here to do it at home. And I will stop here. If you have any questions, I will be happy to entertain. Any questions? Okay. All right. I'll see you next week.
Thank you, Jamal.
All right. I don't think anybody has any questions.
Thanks, Jamal.
Okay. See you guys. Bye-bye.
Sir, I got the assignment question before as well.
Yeah, you can ask me now. Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that for interrupting in the lecture.
No, that's fine. You can interrupt anytime.
So I just want to ask a question for the question one. And I'm a bit confused. I already did the question one, but I just wanted to clarify that how to structure our response for this assignment. So should we only define the vulnerabilities, threats, and CI components in the table, or do we also need to include a detailed lesson for why we selected each CI compartments, vulnerability and threats for the identify sets? Additionally, is it
Excuse
correct?
me, I answered this question already online. Did you look at this online?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, so I answered this question already
So you
online.
sent also the picture in a Teams for the example for the question one.
Well, so you already saw that example.
Yeah, I already saw that. So if I just follow the same example that you have given in the Teams, is that okay?
What do you mean by the same example? You copy and paste?
No. I mean that the answer is different, but if I want to follow the same
so what I said is
question,
that you can use that table.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to follow the structure you have given.
Yes, yes, it's okay to follow the structure.
Yeah, and also, I just wanted to clarify that the selecting the CIA components and the evaluation of their equivalence in the ascents should be provided in the explanation section after the table or in the table itself only.
No, again, as I said, I answered this question in the chat. You put